Sunlight slants through high windows, casting long shadows across worn wooden benches. The air is heavy, not just with summer humidity, but with something older, anticipation. A crowd has gathered, not for spectacle, but for hope. Nurses in scrubs, teachers with dog-eared notebooks, delivery drivers still in their uniforms. They sit shoulder to shoulder, waiting. At the defense table, Alexander Carrington III, 28 years old, adjusts the cufflinks of his Brioni suit, as if he's attending a gala, not a hearing for reckless endangerment, a hearing involving a Ferrari, a school zone, and 2 injured pedestrians. His posture radiates entitlement, his smile, practiced cruelty. His attorney, a polished man named Mitchell Graves, whispers just loud enough for the microphone to catch. We file the motion to dismiss before he even opens his mouth. His honor's known for compassion, but compassion bends under pressure. Alexander doesn't respond. He's already scanning the room, like a king assessing his subjects. Then, Judge Frank Caprio enters. No fanfare, no flourish, just the soft thump of his gavel on the bench, and the room rises as one. Caprio is 86. His hands show age, the knuckles thickened, the skin mottled, but his eyes sharp as flint. He's worn the same black robe for 27 years. It's threadbare at the cuffs. Be seated, he says. Voice quiet but resonant, like a cello played in an empty cathedral. The charges are read. Alexander barely listens. When the prosecution finishes laying out the facts, speeding at 78 miles per hour in a 25 zone, ignoring flashing lights, dragging a crosswalk sign for 40 feet before stopping, Alexander exhales through his nose. Smirks. Caprio turns to him. Mr. Carrington, do you wish to speak before we hear from counsel? Alexander stands. Smooth. Confident. I do. A pause. He leans forward, resting his palms on the defense table. Eyes locked, not deferential. Challenging. My lawyer, he says, voice low, almost conversational, will destroy you. The courtroom inhales. A woman in the front row clutches her purse like a lifeline. A veteran bailiff, 20 years on the job, blinks, stunned. Caprio doesn't move. No outrage. No raised voice. Just silence, deep, unshakable, ancient. He removes his glasses, wipes them slowly with a handkerchief pulled from his pocket, folds it, places it beside the gavel. Then he looks up. Is that a threat, Mr. Carrington? No. Alexander's grin widens. It's a forecast. A murmur ripples. Graves shifts uncomfortably, but doesn't object. He wants this. Drama unsettles juries. Judges too, especially older ones. But Caprio isn't unsettled. He leans in just slightly. Let me tell you something I learned when I was your age. His voice remains calm, but now it carries like thunder across water. Power isn't in your father's name. It isn't in your bank account. It's in this. He taps the wooden bench. In the oath I took. In the truth you just tried to drown. With arrogance. Alexander scoffs. Truth? Please. You think morality wins cases? My father donates buildings to courthouses like this one. Then perhaps, Caprio replies, quietly, but the microphone picks it up. He should have donated a lesson in humility. The gallery erupts in soft applause, quickly silenced by the bailiff, but the damage is done. Lines have been drawn. Graves finally stands. Your Honor, I move for a recess. My client is emotionally charged. Caprio studies Alexander, not as a defendant, but as a symptom. Motion denied, he says. We proceed. A beat. But before we do, Mr. Carrington, Alexander glares. Your father built skyscrapers. Caprio says, but do you know what holds them up? Alexander opens his mouth. The foundation. Caprio's voice drops, final as a tombstone closing. And foundations don't bend. They bear. He turns to the clerk. Enter into evidence. The dashcam footage from Officer Ruiz's cruiser. The one your client's team tried to lose during discovery. Graves pales. Alexander's smirk flickers just for a second. Then the screen lights up. The video shows the Ferrari swerving, tires screaming. Then a blur of red and white as a crossing guard stumbles back, barely escaping. A child's backpack tumbles into the street. The room is frozen. Caprio doesn't look at the screen. He looks at Alexander, and for the first time, the young heir looks away. The air is different now. Thicker, heavier. Alexander sits rigid. His suit is still immaculate, but his tie is slightly askew. His hands, folded on the table, are clenched. Graves has spent the lunch recess on 3 phone calls, 2 to Washington, 1 to a governor's aide. The word on the street? Caprio's going too far. But Caprio isn't swayed. He's just finished hearing testimony from Elena Ruiz, the crossing guard, a widow, a grandmother. She didn't ask for money, just an apology. Alexander refused to look at her. Now, Caprio turns to him. Mr. Carrington, voice measured, unhurried. You've heard the evidence. You've seen the footage. You've listened to a woman whose only crime was trying to keep children safe. A pause. Just long enough for the weight to settle. Do you have anything to say before I render judgment? Alexander stands, but this time, no smirk. His voice is tighter, controlled, dangerous. I'll say this. He locks eyes with Caprio. You think you're righteous. You think you're David swinging at Goliath, but you're not. You're a functionary, a cog. He takes a step forward against protocol, but no one stops him, and cogs get replaced. Another step. My family has influence you can't imagine. Foundations named after us, universities, hospitals, judges appointed because we called. His voice drops, cold, deliberate. You think one viral moment makes you untouchable? Tomorrow, there'll be op-eds questioning your fitness. By Monday, ethics complaints. By next month, retirement. With dignity, if you play it right. A gasp. A man in the back stands, then sits again, shaking his head. Caprio doesn't interrupt, he waits. When Alexander finishes, breathing just a little too fast, Caprio nods, slowly. Thank you, he says, for your candor. Then, he stands. The entire courtroom rises. Caprio walks slowly to the edge of the bench. He doesn't look at Alexander. He looks at the gallery, at the nurses, the teachers, the delivery drivers. At the start of every session, voice carrying to the back row, I remind myself, this isn't about me. It's about the child who didn't get hit today because someone finally said no. He turns, meets Alexander's gaze. You asked if I'm outdated. A faint, knowing lift at the corner of his mouth. No, I'm anchored. In a world where truth is trending and justice is negotiated, I am the weight that keeps the scale from tipping. He returns to his seat. Alexander Carrington III, you stand before this court not because you broke the speed limit. His voice steadies, deepens. But because you broke faith. With the law, with decency, with the idea that we are all subject to the same rules. Silence stretches, taut, expectant. The state has requested a $5,000 fine and community service. The gallery leans in. Caprio's next words are quiet but absolute. I sentence you to $5,000 paid not as a fine but as direct restitution to Miss Ruiz. For therapy, for lost wages. Alexander exhales, almost a laugh. Peanuts. But Caprio isn't finished. Second, you will serve 300 hours of community service. Graves stiffens. Not at a gala, not at a ribbon cutting. Caprio's voice tightens, just slightly. You will report every Saturday for 1 year to the Providence Youth Mentorship Center, a program your family's PAC tried to defund last spring. Alexander's face drains, color leaching like ink in rain. You will tutor. You will listen. You will sit across from kids who don't have your safety net, and you will see them. Graves leaps to his feet. Your Honor, that's vindictive, unduly burdensome. We'll appeal. Caprio raises a hand. Not stern, not angry, just final. And third, before you leave this courtroom today, he looks at Alexander, not with contempt, with clarity. You will stand, turn to Miss Ruiz, and say, I'm sorry. A beat. Not for the cameras, not for your PR team. His voice softens just enough for her. Silence. Alexander's jaw works, his eyes dart to his lawyer, to the exit, to the judge. He thinks, I can fight this. I can win on appeal. I can bury him in paperwork. But then, he looks at Miss Ruiz. She's not crying, thus she's not glaring. She's just waiting. And in that moment, he sees it, not weakness in her, strength, the kind money can't buy, the kind his father never taught him. Slowly, agonizingly, he stands, turns. His voice is hoarse, cracked at the edges. I'm sorry. It's not perfect, it's not grand, but it's real. And in that fragile, broken syllable, the courtroom exhales. A collective release, like a storm passing. Caprio nods. Court is adjourned. People begin to rise, some wiping eyes, others whispering, a few just staring at the floor, as if recalibrating their faith in something they'd almost forgotten, that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply holds. Outside, the news vans swarm. Cameras flash, microphones thrust forward. Inside, the clerk approaches Caprio, eyes wide. They're already calling it the Caprio standard, Your Honor. Social media's exploding. Caprio smiles, faint, tired, true. Let them talk, he says, folding his handkerchief, placing it gently in his pocket. The law doesn't need applause. He gathers his notes. It just needs to hold. Judge Caprio leaned forward, his eyes never leaving Alexander Carrington. The courtroom, which had been buzzing with tension, fell silent as the judge spoke, his voice calm but unwavering. Let me explain something to you, Alexander, Caprio began, his words measured but carrying the weight of years of experience. You may think that money and power can bend the law, that arrogance and threats will get you what you want, but I've seen it all before. And you. He paused, locking eyes with the young man. You don't scare me. Alexander's jaw tightened, the smirk fading from his face. He wasn't used to being talked to like this. He shifted in his seat, the air of invincibility starting to crack. But he quickly masked his discomfort with a sneer. Are you done, old man? Alexander retorted, trying to regain control of the room. You've been playing this game too long. The world's changed, and people like you, he motioned dismissively at Caprio, are being left behind. Caprio didn't flinch. Instead, he straightened up in his chair, his expression unchanging, and then he unleashed a counterattack that no one in the room expected. You're right about one thing, Caprio said, his voice lowering. The world has changed, but not in the way you think. You see, your idea of power is one that depends on wealth and influence. You think your father's money and your lawyer's threats will shield you from consequences. But the truth, Alexander, is that the real power is something you'll never understand. Alexander opened his mouth to retort, but Caprio raised a hand, silencing him. The real power is the law. The law doesn't care how much money you have or who your father is. It doesn't care about your name or your connections. The law is about justice, about right and wrong, and about accountability. And that's something you clearly know nothing about. The words hung in the air, each syllable carrying the weight of Caprio's life's work. For a brief moment, there was only silence. Thick, suffocating silence. The room seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for Alexander to react. But Alexander was rattled now. His cocky demeanor faltered for the first time. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and his face flushed with frustration. He was used to being in control, used to dominating every room he entered. But here, in front of Judge Caprio, he felt small, powerless. He had underestimated the judge's resolve, his unwavering commitment to justice. Caprio's voice rose again, this time with the quiet intensity of someone who had seen too many like Alexander. You think the system is there for you to exploit, that you can waltz in and out of a courtroom with your wealth and privilege, but let me make one thing crystal clear. He paused, letting the words land. This is not your world, Alexander. It's not a world of easy wins, of paying off problems with money, or silencing voices with threats. This is a world where, for all your arrogance, for all your wealth, the truth will stand, and it will come for you. It always does. Alexander opened his mouth, but no words came out. The sting of Caprio's words hit harder than any lawyer's argument or privileged insult. The rich boy, the one who had thought himself untouchable, suddenly seemed so small. His confidence crumbled in real time as the full force of Caprio's calm, unrelenting dignity bore down on him. The judge stood then, slow and deliberate, as if the weight of what had just been said needed to settle. The audience, holding their collective breath, watched as Caprio delivered the final blow, his voice carrying through the room. I've spent my life making sure that justice isn't a commodity you can buy. You've lost before you even stepped into this courtroom. Not because of your lawyer, not because of your money, but because the truth doesn't bend for anyone, not even for you. And with that, Judge Caprio sat back down. The room remained still, the impact of his words reverberating in every corner of the courtroom. Alexander Carrington was left speechless, the weight of the moment sinking in, his arrogant smirk gone for good. The fight had just begun, but it was clear who had the upper hand. The moment Caprio sat back, the courtroom erupted, not in chaos, but in a stunned, almost reverent silence. It was as if the entire room had collectively inhaled and held its breath. The rich boy's bravado had evaporated, leaving him exposed and vulnerable, the walls of his arrogance crumbling with every word the judge had spoken. Within minutes, news outlets began to buzz with the shocking turn of events. Headlines flashed across the screens. Judge Caprio stands unyielding against privilege, wealthy heir challenged in court by relentless justice. But it wasn't just the news that exploded. Social media caught fire. Twitter threads filled with hashtags like Caprio for the people, justice isn't for sale, and hashtag privilege cracked. Memes spread across Instagram and TikTok. Images of the judge's calm face juxtaposed with Alexander's stunned expression. The internet was buzzing with excitement, and soon Caprio's name was everywhere. Influencers, celebrities, and even political figures weighed in, expressing their admiration for Caprio's steadfast commitment to justice. A popular comedian tweeted, "When Caprio dropped the mic, I swear the whole courtroom felt that." While an influential senator posted, "Caprio showed the world that no one, not even the rich and powerful, is above the law. We need more judges like him." The ripple effect continued to build. In living rooms and cafes across the country, people gathered around their screens, discussing what had just unfolded. Caprio wasn't just a judge anymore. He had become a symbol of resistance to the establishment. His calm demeanor and unwavering principles had struck a chord with the public, particularly those who felt powerless in a system that often favored the wealthy. But it wasn't just support that flooded in. A few vocal critics, deeply entrenched in the world of the privileged, tried to downplay Caprio's victory, calling it a one-off or a lucky shot. But even they couldn't escape the overwhelming tide of public opinion. The shockwaves of that courtroom moment were only just beginning to be felt, and they would reshape everything. What had been an ordinary legal battle had now become a cultural reckoning, a turning point where power and privilege faced an unyielding force. Caprio's victory wasn't just a personal one. It had ignited something much bigger. It was a movement, and it was just getting started. As the world continued to buzz with the aftermath of the trial, Judge Caprio stood firm in his convictions, unfazed by the public's adoration. He knew that the real victory wasn't in the viral hashtags or the media frenzy. It was in the principle that had guided him his entire career. Justice, at its core, is not for sale. Standing in the quiet of his chambers, Caprio reflected on the moment. He had faced powerful people before, but this time something felt different. This wasn't just about one man, one case. This was about reminding the world that dignity, integrity, and the pursuit of justice could not be swayed by the weight of money or the arrogance of privilege. Caprio had fought not for the accolades or the applause, but for the very foundation of the law. He had shown, with unyielding clarity, that no one, no matter how powerful, was above accountability. He had delivered a truth that would resonate long after the courtroom doors had closed. The rich boy, once so sure of his invincibility, had been handed the lesson of a lifetime. Power isn't defined by wealth or influence, but by the courage to stand for what's right. And in that moment, Alexander Carrington wasn't just defeated in court. He was confronted by a reality he couldn't escape. Caprio's message echoed beyond the trial. It was a call to action for everyone who felt powerless, for those whose voices had been silenced by systems of corruption. Justice was not just a concept. It was a living, breathing force, ready to confront the privileged and empower the forgotten. And in that victory, the people saw something greater than just one man's triumph. They saw the possibility of a world where truth would always prevail. The battle may have ended in the courtroom, but the real fight was just beginning. Judge Caprio's unwavering stand against privilege and corruption had sparked a fire that was now burning in the hearts of those who believed in justice, dignity, and equality. This wasn't just a win for Caprio, it was a win for everyone who had ever felt powerless, for anyone who had ever wondered if the system could truly be fair. It was proof that integrity, no matter how hard fought, would always triumph over arrogance and privilege. As the world continues to reflect on the moment that shook the establishment, remember, justice isn't a commodity to be bought or sold. It's a right, and we all have a part to play in protecting it. If Caprio's courage inspired you, then it's time to take action. Share this story, stand up for what's right, and never let the forces of inequality go unchallenged. The power of the people is stronger than any money or influence. Together, we can create a world where truth, justice, and fairness reign. Don't let this moment fade. Subscribe, share, and be part of the movement, because the fight for justice, it's just getting started.